episode of Wisdom and Hustle, I'm talking to Kimberly Moore, an expert in school mobility solutions. She's the co-founder of Go Together. Launched in 2017, it's a company that is creating alternatives to getting kids to and from school. Because of her entrepreneurial spirit, her business is solving a problem for both families and schools. And also because of her tenacity as a business owner, Kimberly is where she is today. And so we're going to talk about how she acquired a business, how she became an accidental entrepreneur at 52, and what it all means to stay in the hustle. Welcome, Kimberly.
Well, thank you. It's so good to be here. Thank you. Thank you. What a wonderful introduction.
Yes. And so let's just get started on how you landed in this entrepreneurial space and how Go Together became.
Yeah. So I've been living my life for the last 21 years off of a quote that I heard a speaker say, and that is opportunities of a lifetime have to be seized in the lifetime of the opportunity. And the opportunity to dive into solving this problem of school transportation came in a conversation in the kitchen with my sister, a single mom, sales executive with a daughter in school that didn't have bus service. And she was trying to figure out how to get her to practice. Now, her client was all the way in Baltimore. And as we all know, in the DMV, that can be quite a commute.
Yes.
Her to only drive 15 minutes from there to drop off her daughter. So she asked me to help. She also knew that I was looking for a side hustle in between my event production gigs. And she looked at me and said, I think this is what you can do. And I heard that guy's quote in my mind. And I thought, I don't really know very much about this, but, let me see. At the time, I drove a Mercedes station wagon, and obviously with plenty of space to carry kids around, I thought, I'll try to figure that out. And I spent the next 3 weeks really, trying to understand my motivation for wanting to explore it, but also, is this really something? And as it turns out, it really was.
Wow. And so you became this accidental entrepreneur because
Yes.
you really weren't looking necessarily to have a business. You were looking really for just something to shore up some time and income. And
Yes.
so when you became this accidental entrepreneur, what went through your mind? How were you feeling?
Yeah. So I really am an accidental entrepreneur. Like for many people who start businesses, they knew when they were little or in high school, I want to be an entrepreneur. That is not me. I wanted to be an executive in corporate America, which I almost got there. I mean, I think that my vision was not necessarily to go out there and lead because I didn't have a really good understanding, but I knew it would be hard. And so, but I heard that man's quote and it sort of just moved me in the place of, okay, now you got to decide. You're here, accident or not, are you going to do it? And I also don't like to live in regret. So I thought I will give it a certain period of time. And then after that time, I can say I tried and I can move on to the next thing. Well, that was 8 years ago. And so I'm still here having continued to solve the problem as it comes up.
And still having fun at it, I hope.
I am still having fun, different kind of fun, but fun. Yes.
Gotcha. And so you shared this story with me about how, you and your sister had this aha moment.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're like, okay, maybe so. And then you started to really kind of understand what this might take to really be a bona fide business.
Yes.
And then you called somebody and then something happened.
Yes. So a good friend of mine, who's now my co-founder, Harvard grad, business and undergrad, said to me, Kimberly, just explore. you don't know, but I think you can solve this problem. So I started exploring, what's the business model? I knew that enough to know you've got to figure out a way that people are going to pay you and how you're going to grow this business. And so I'm a data nerd, and I dive in and start reading to figure out how to create this business model. So once I partnered with a friend of mine to create that business model, it looked like it was going to be not a possibility because the cost per trip, I think of Uber for kids, but multiply that trip cost by probably 3 times. And after we came up with the model, I was like, this is going to be too expensive. I went back to my friend, now my co-founder, Charles King, and said, hey, it's going to be too much per family. And he said, you know what, Kimberly, don't worry about how much it costs right now. Focus on your service delivery. So that switched my gear, and I started paying attention to what is this like for the parent? What is it like for the child? I went through a whole psycho dynamic for the parent. What are they thinking about as they're deciding on this problem and how they want to solve it? And sort of walked out, what are the issues they're trying to solve for? What are the things that they're facing? Did that. And when I got down to the pricing, how do we price this to make it such that we can scale over time? I realized that it really wasn't going to work unless we could create what we now know as a ride share, multiple people riding in the car at the same time. And but you needed technology to create that multiple person trip. And obviously at that point, I did not have any technology. And so I reached out to a founder who did have a technology that I was hoping to license. And as we got into this conversation, she said, Kimberly, I love what you're doing. However, I'm selling my company. Do you want to buy it? And that's where the acquisition came in.
And so, Kimberly, when you got this offer, like, what went through your mind? Was that like a, wait a minute, am I really ready for this? Like, I was just calling for like some coaching or some
Right.
information, like
Yeah,
not to like buy a business.
exactly. Well, again, I hear opportunities of a lifetime have to be seized in the lifetime of the opportunity. And this felt like an opportunity of a lifetime. So she didn't see me. I'm like the duck on the pond. My feet are treading water underneath. On the camera, I look like, calm, cool, collected, but I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? What's going on? And I immediately got off with her and called Charles, my co-founder, and said, hey, I got this offer. I don't know what I'm doing. And I don't know how to take this from this conversation to actually making it happen. So he walked me through a few things. And then I had a mentor at this point who was a serial entrepreneur. He exited 2 businesses at this point, meaning that his businesses were acquired, and asked him, like, how do I create this offer? What do I need to do? And between the 2 of them, they helped me put the offer together and how to finance it. And in 90 days, we acquired the company.
Wow.
I was
Wow.
scared the entire time.
Wow. And so, okay, so now you're a business owner now. Like you're
Yeah.
like, I'm all in. And so you had not owned a business before.
No.
Like, were you scared? Like, okay,
Yes.
so now I need to get some training on like how to run a business.
Well, so it's interesting. I believe that from early in my professional career, I've always been a builder. And so one of the things that, and I think it's innate, no one ever showed me, when it's time to actually do something, I seem to figure out the next step and then the next step after that. I also am not afraid to ask for help.
Mm.
I just have never been afraid to ask for help. I don't know what I'm doing. And so if my goal is to have some measure of success, I need people who've done this before in order to, even as I could be recognized as a very successful professional at some point. I don't know what I'm doing right here.
Mhm.
And so, bit by bit, I started to figure out, well, now we've acquired this company. Now it's my job to kind of dig into the technology that we've acquired, see how it works. We had 15 customers that came with it. So
Oh,
it was great
that's
for
good.
us to be able, yes, to have revenue already and to be able to talk with them and try to figure out, what they like, what they didn't like. And it was daunting. It really was. But I
Mhm.
knew I needed to start building relationships with those customers, figure out. I knew the pricing of the subscription was way too low, but I
Mm.
didn't know how to reprice it.
Mhm.
So I actually reached out to an expert and paid him to help me think through how to restructure the pricing. So it just became one step at a time. And again, when I talk to other entrepreneurs, that's the thing that many people get stuck in is how do you know what to do?
Yeah, yeah.
Can't really say that I can really answer that. I just knew what to do. Like, okay,
Right.
do this next. Now, I will say that my background is primarily in sales.
Mhm.
And so I think that helps, right? I'm not trying to actually build the technology. I'm trying to sell it ultimately.
Right.
So I know
Mhm.
what to look for in order to figure out how to sell something. Who is our customer? What's the sales cycle? Different things like that.
And
But I would
so
share the entire time.
and so when I think about, your business, I think about it being like an Uber, as you indicated, an Uber
Mhm.
for kids. And so how might you be different from your competitors?
Yeah. So interestingly enough, my first idea was like an Uber for kids. Here's what I discovered after, working with 10 different families. Interestingly enough, one of those 10 families actually reached out to me on Facebook.
Ah.
She reached out to be a Facebook friend and she's like, I knew you were going to do this. I knew you were going to be successful. And it was so awesome. She was able to catch me up on her daughter and her grandson and her mother. And it was just so fun. But I did know that what we were doing, if we were going to do a ride share, was going to be really expensive. And Uber and Lyft would tell you that it took them 10 years to become profitable, right? And yet they had raised tens and if not hundreds of millions of dollars to
Mm.
run the business.
Mhm.
And largely because it's a consumer business, right? And so business to consumer was not my background. I really am a business to business or business to government sales executive and what it would cost to, promote the business to consumers, um, what it would cost to be able to acquire those customers, just the building a technology at scale right from the beginning. I realized this is going to be too expensive. There's got to be another way. So acquiring the software that was already in existence, I figured out I would be more successful one selling to schools than I would be trying to create a strategy. I could figure it out, but it would be hard.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it's just too expensive. We wouldn't get to profitability per trip for about 6 months on
Wow.
one driver.
On one
That's
drive.
on one driver. That's too long. You need to see some measure of margin over a shorter period of time. So I figured out, selling software is a whole lot easier than selling through people, right? So we would have to have a supply side of drivers, which I also knew instinctively would be very difficult. Uber and Lyft have trained drivers that I drive when I want to. I don't have to commit to anything. But if you're driving kids who are a parent's just everything, they're not going to put their kids before new people every day. That's not going to happen. We
Yeah.
have to have people who would commit to a regular trip. You have to have backup drivers, but largely the parent could depend on maybe one or two people.
Mhm.
And that was going to be hard to do. It
Yeah.
really was. And so I just figured out the pathway to go was software. And if you're going to have a business and you're going to scale it, build to scale it right when you start, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because scaling it, and you can scale it over time. But I just figured if I'm just going to solve the problem for DC, I might as well solve it for the country.
Exactly. You got
Yeah,
some quick wins early, right?
exactly. So I might not get them here in DC. So why not sell it anywhere else? And that's the beauty of software. So that was sort of the approach that I took. And how we're different from our competitors is there are Uber for Kids models that are out there, but they too, even after raising tens of millions of dollars, realize that consumer market is not going to build a sustainable business. Could over time, but to get started and to have some measure of success, they just didn't see it. And they've even pivoted to selling to school districts, right? And really helping those families that are experiencing homelessness or children who are in foster care. Those are federally mandated funds. So they knew they had a consistent revenue stream that they would be able to tap into. So we're different from them in that we don't have direct drivers and that we sell software to districts or schools and that their parents are the drivers and they do it on a voluntary basis. So we are competing in the same space, but we are approaching solving the problem in a different way. So we have very few direct competitors, really. And our approach, if we think about it, we give parents the ability to choose between carpooling, kids walking, biking, or taking public transit together. Even our nearest competitor only gives you one option. But we know, just like as adults, that we can choose Uber, the metro, the bus, a scooter, and parents want different options. And so we played the long game of doing a multi-mode approach as opposed to just saying we'll just one approach. And that's how we're different.
And so, Kimberly, this is really kind of like, a little bit of a new phenomena, if you will.
Yes.
If you think about like safety,
Yes.
people feel, with bullying and all that comes with, going to school.
Yes.
And so this really is kind of like that, as I've indicated, like the safe alternative.
Yes.
That parents really can believe in, and schools have adopted it.
Yes.
And so I really, really like that. And while I don't have kids, but I can only imagine that, I think about like when I was in school, like safety, safety is safety. But I think about now, like safety it looks very different
Oh, yes.
than 40 years ago, right? And
Yes.
so, and I think that with parents having these options, that's really great. And so, and so I'm curious, like, how do you build the confidence of parents in, when their hands are not in it, or it's not a school bus, that they
Yes.
can hold somebody accountable,
Yeah.
if you will.
So it's a very good question. What we really discovered early on is trust is really the currency that we're exchanging with the parent and with the school or the school district. And so how do we build that trust? How we build it with parents is this: we know that if the school verifies every parent that's using our software, the parent knows, oh, it's not just me verifying them. The school is saying, yes, this family is part of this community. Then we take it another step further, and that we have background screening. So it can be as extensive as criminal, national, local, sex offender registry, or just the MVR. So now they know that their child is riding with someone who has a valid driver's license, insurance, and a good driving record, right? That's also adding that additional layer of trust and safety. From the school or the district's perspective, we've really shored up our terms of service so that parents know it is still your choice. This is still a voluntary option for you, and that you will indemnify the school or the district to use our platform. And that seems to work.
That's great. That's great. And so now here you are, you're a business owner. You've had 30 plus years as in the corporate world. What skills are you bringing to this business?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned earlier, my background is in sales, selling to federal government, selling to businesses. And so I bring that skill for sure. And because I was an executive director in the wireless industry, working with Verizon Wireless, they did an exceptional job building leadership skills within me. So I bring that. I also bring the leadership skill about developing people. I've recognized really early in my career at Verizon Wireless that I could see things in people that were on our team that they couldn't see in themselves.
Mm.
I felt like it was my job to bring out, all of that so they could see what I saw, and giving them more than what they probably thought they would be capable of doing. And always recognizing that, what I'm doing now also ensures that they're going to leave my team because they're going to go do something else. But I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And so I still do that today. I really try, I think I do a good job of empowering our team and giving them opportunities to work on things that they might not normally do. And so I bring that leadership skills. The one thing I didn't do in my other job that I've had to bring with me or attract and bring onto our team is the financial modeling. I was always a person who reviewed financial modeling. I never created.
Got it.
And so as a business owner, knowing your numbers is everything. And so if you don't know how to do that, got to find somebody to help you do that so that you understand, because that's really the difference between those people who can really build something at scale and those people who might just stay more like I don't know, kind of like it could be just a side hustle, and that would be fine. But if you're really thinking with a big vision to scale, you really have to know your business.
And I love that, Kimberly, because I think about like if you're trying to start a business, you're going to need to lean into some things that you've learned over the years. That's where that wisdom comes in, and really be brave enough
Mm-hmm.
to learn some of the other aspects of being in business that perhaps you're probably not you're most comfortable with. So
Yes.
I like that, you're bringing in your little skills, but also recognizing that you might be at a little bit of a deficit and you need to learn up, as I say,
Yeah.
in those areas. And so as we, move into some advice for entrepreneurs, what are some personal philosophies that you've adopted that keeps you going?
Yeah. What I did in those first 3 weeks was I really, really dialed into why am I doing this?
Mhm.
Because I was very successful at Verizon Wireless. I made a lot of money, got to do a lot of amazing things. But what I recognize is money is not going to be enough. We're going to hit a place in the building of this business that it's going to be hard. And what's going to keep me in it when it's really, really hard? And it took me about 3 weeks to figure it out. And I don't think even after those 3 weeks, I really figured it out, but I had enough that would be a good anchor. And I also think that you have to know when it's time to end it.
Mm.
And that's not always easy. I know I've considered quitting multiple times, multiple, and
But
that's
you leaned
okay.
into that why.
Yes, lean into the why. You got to figure it out because that's what's going to sustain you. The other thing that I would say is if someone has a full-time job right now and they have a side hustle and they want to turn the side hustle into their business, what you must do first before you do that is you need to live on the income of the side hustle and not the income of the full-time job.
Ah, okay.
Okay. Because one thing that you'll do as an entrepreneur is sacrifice. And some of it is sacrificing your lifestyle. So if you look at your lifestyle and it includes, oh, I go to Europe every 3 months and I saw a new bag that came out, I'm getting that. Making those adjustments while you don't have to is critical. So learning how to live on less for about 6 months and see how it feels. If you think you can do it, great. But if you think it's too hard, keep the side hustle and just have both of those things going on. Maybe at some point you might feel like you're ready, but to me, that's really super important. The third thing I would say is the entrepreneur is a single point of failure. And so being at your best is what you got to focus on. Your best health, your best emotional and mental health, your best, business health, meaning being willing, you got to be a lifelong learner. You just can't stop. You're going to always be learning. And you mentioned earlier in the introduction, I was 52 when I first started. And, some people think, oh, you dial down, it's time for retirement, whatever. No. Like, I don't even know when I'm going to retire. I've been really energized to continue to work and build. And so you got to be committed to learning, and especially like things like AI, right?
Yeah.
That wasn't part of our degree program.
Right.
Wasn't part of the first half of our professional life. And so if you are going to be in business, especially technology, you got to decide, I'm going to learn AI.
Yeah.
And I'm going to look at how it can work in the business, because everybody's going to ask me, how are you using AI? You don't necessarily have to have a technology company to use AI, but you need to figure out, is there an opportunity? So I think those are the big things that I would offer as advice.
Okay.
I think the individual, is so important, because if you're not healthy, the business is not going to grow.
And so I love that, because I think about AI, like you don't have to be a business owner. We are inundated with how to use AI as your assistant and how to use AI for this and so it's, people are worried about, like, it's going to take our jobs. Well, it's not going to necessarily take your job. It's going to really you got to figure out how you're going to use it to enhance your job.
That's exactly right.
And so that's really kind of the place that we're all in.
Yes.
As I always say, if we're going to stay relevant.
Yes.
And so, Kimberly, what's next for Go To Together, and how can folks find you?
Yeah. So what's next for us is we are at that tipping point of getting ready to scale. So we've had a lot of incredible conversations with districts, and we have some really exciting sales opportunities that are going to close in the next quarter. And to add to that, in order to really scale with the vision that we have, it's time for us to raise capital. And so I'm preparing to do that right now. Just earlier today, met with someone to help me think about how to approach it. And because we are in education, and we have heard from the president that the Department of Education is being dismantled, I just reached out to about 5 investors to say, what does this mean for you? How are you thinking about investing? And what do you think about having this distributed sort of school education model that's not centralized, right? And so I'm have appointments scheduled with at least 2 of those 5 investors to get that sense of where they think things are going.
Right.
And so probably the best place for people to find me is on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Socially, our company's on Twitter, mostly on Instagram, but I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn. You'll find me at Kimberly Y. Moore on LinkedIn, because there's a lot of Kimberly Moores. And on Twitter, I'm at KY Moore and the number 1.
Great. So, Kimberly, this has been great. And I'm going to have to invite you back so you can give us some nuggets on how you approach investors, how to be successful in that. So I'm going to have a whole conversation around like what people need to know, aside from also the journeys that we're sharing here. And so before we close, what are your words or word of wisdom for staying in the hustle?
Yeah, such a great question. I'll end with kind of how I started. Know your why. It's got to be something that's bigger than, making a lot of money, being famous on Instagram or any of those things, because they wear out really quickly. And be willing to be uncomfortable. I mean, it's the name of the game as an entrepreneur, willing to deal with uncertainty. New administrations come in, the market changes, new technologies get infused, and just realizing that being open to all of that change is something it's got to be part of your DNA. And if it's not already, to decide you're going to cultivate that over time.
Great. So Kimberly, thank you.
You're welcome.
You for sharing your story, your insights, and your wisdom. And thank you to everyone for joining us on this episode of Wisdom and Hustle. I hope you were inspired, encouraged, and motivated to perhaps start or continue your hustle. Be sure to continue to join me as I continue to tell the journey of founders, seasoned founders. You can listen to this podcast and anywhere else you enjoy your podcast. And until next time, stay in the hustle.